Curtis Yarvin, intellectual hero of conservative elites, debunked. Curtis Yarvin, aka Mencius Moldbug, former coder and pseudo-intellectual shit disturber. He wrote some popular blogs many years ago. He's literally a monarchist and is admired by conspiracy-brained authoritarian conservatives who cosplay as libertarian populists. Yarvin claims mainstream media and academia corrupted progressive groupthink. He calls this the cathedral. Strange that he's saying all this in mainstream media source, isn't it? Because, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, this is based on his way too fucking verbose interview with the New York Times in which he lays out his whole seemingly complex but in reality specious philosophy. Anyway, so it's just mostly typical dumb hyperbolic paranoia, the cathedral. It's a conservative way of labeling leftism as a religion. Religion and ideology are obviously at least slightly different. It's not as if conservatism is any less ideological than any type of lefty ideology. Anyway, Yarvin wants an American democracy to be displaced with a monarchy led by a CEO who runs the country like a corporation. This is his way of nerfing the word dictator, basically. Yarvin uses copious, obscure historical references to make himself sound smart, but in reality, he rejects mainstream sources in favor of highly debated authoritarian ones, which doesn't mean mainstream sources are always right. It means like his sources are most likely wrong. Anyway, he also oversimplifies, cherry picks, and presents his opinions as facts, like his interpretations of events. He presents those as they're objectively correct, even though they're his opinions. So Yarvin says America is afraid of dictators. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder why the fuck that might be. Wonder why they're afraid. He also claims the American democracy is beyond saving. The only way to save the country is with a king, aka King Fat Dumbass of America, who's ruining the country right now. So, what's his problem with democracy and how would a dictator solve it? Yarvin argues that we've had dictators before, mainly FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, of course, who, you know, got the country out of the Great Depression, arguably, although it was obviously more complex than that. So, but anyway, of course, Yarvin says that since FDR was an authoritarian, or well, Yarvin says that FDR was a dictator, of course, because he's just an authoritarian conservative who just wants those who he sees as the correct authoritarian elites in power. Yarvin is also so fucking full of himself that he's writing essays and sending them to billionaire oligarchs. This includes Mark Andreessen, who lied about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to world famous MAGA sycophant podcaster comedian Joe Rogan. Yarvin claims FDR was a dictator who acted like a CEO and ran the famous slash infamous New Deal program as a startup. That's fucking stupid and inconsistent, man. He's arguing FDR was a CEO because he literally passed laws through in the totally legal way. He says that himself in this first fucking paragraph of the interview. He just thinks FDR was a dictator because he was a lefty. FDR wasn't a dictator who acted like a CEO and ran a country like a corporation because, as Yarvin says him fucking self in the same paragraph, FDR passed laws legally through Congress. President Fat Dumbass of America is literally bypassing Congress and ignoring Supreme Court blocking that right now. Also, Yarvin should admire FDR according to his own logic. I'm not saying that he's admirable. I'm saying by his according to his own logic, he should be admirable because he's a dictator who operated the country like a CEO. But anyway, but other than Yarvin wanting to somewhat copy FDR's methods, he still sees FDR as a villain because he was a lefty, which is does not match his logic and makes it inconsistent. Let's also remember that even if Yarvin is 100% correct about FBR, there being a dictator monarch in the past doesn't at all necessarily justify there being one now. Yarvin goes on to label George Washington and Alexander Hamilton as dictators who set up the US as a startup, with Hamilton running the entire government. This is just another historical example in support of his completely fallacious point, which is that there being a monarch in the past justifies making President Fat Dumbass one now. Again, even if Yarvin is right about Washington and Hamilton, which he isn't, something having happened before does not at all mean that it should happen now. And the interview in the New York Times article basically responds to this by pointing out that Yarvin is deliberately being pedantic and obtuse again. So Yarvin is friends with J.D. Vance, but according to Yarvin, this is exaggerated. However, he definitely has influence on powerful politicians like Vance, along with billionaire oligarchs like Mark Andreessen and Peter Thiel. Plus, Vance himself has cited Yarvin as inspiration and directly mimicked his talking points. Yarvin has said publicly that he wants an American Caesar, like the famous ancient Roman monarch who defied authority of the other two members of the triumvirate and took all power for himself, as many people know. The billionaire Peter Thiel is fascinated by Yarvin's thoughts. Thiel and Andreessen, along with, of course, President Elon Musk, donated hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to Vice President Fat Dumbass. However, even Yarvin clarifies that it's actually not time for an American monarchy yet. This begs the obvious question, though. Why are so many people talking about Fat Dumbass becoming King Fat Dumbass, who are heavily involved with the administration and donated hundreds of millions to the campaign? Yarvin thinks that nothing major will change as a result of this election. Yeah, bro, we'll see about that. I really do hope that he's right about that, but let's not kid ourselves. Yarvin admires Vance because he's a charismatic normie American to him. How fucking hilarious is that? He's actually a born again conservative Catholic MAGA sycophant with zero charisma. But Yarvin respects Vance because he went to Yale. That's literally why. Why the fuck does he admire people who, according to his own logic, pay tens of thousands of dollars to, according to his own argument, get indoctrinated by the woke cathedral? Gee, I wonder why that is. And Yarvin also literally claims Trump can bring all Americans together by appealing to progressives. I think that ship has unfucking questionably sailed. But at least Yarvin admits that woke progressives are not evil and only represent 10 to 20% of Americans. On the other hand, though, right after he says that now is not the time for an American Caesar, he advocates for retiring all government employees because the Democratic government is a company that needs to go out of business since it failed. That's his argument. After retiring all government employees, Yarvin talks about replacing all government employees with a new regime of an American aristocracy, with billionaire oligarchs and mega sycophants leading it, of course. Yarvin basically pussyfoots around, but suggests Vance believes in governments that serve what Vance sees as the common good, and probably what Yarvin sees as the common good as well. And crucially, the current American democracy is bad because it doesn't serve the common good, apparently. The implication here is crystal fucking clear. To Yarvin, Vance does not believe in American democracy because he doesn't think it serves the common good. This is why the number one next step for Vance and President Fat Dumbass's administration should be retiring all government employees and replacing them with new MAGA monarchy of American aristocrats. The aristocrats will sycophantically approve literally everything King Fat Dumbass Trump does. Yarvin then says monarchies are more effective and efficient for people's lives because everything in our lives is already a monarchy, apparently. Example, Apple is a monarchy. That's just a goddamn tautology in response to the question of why monarchies improve our lives. Monarchies are good for us because they exist. Great job, bro. What a genius intellectual point. Something is good for us because it exists, dumbass. To Yarvin, a MacBook would be worse if it were made by government, and the New York Times is a hereditary monarchy admired by progressives. This fucking genius doesn't even understand that governments and corporations are different, serve different functions, have opposing goals, and incompatible systems. Whether you like valid criticisms of democracy aside, there are plenty of valid criticisms of democracy, but that still doesn't change the fact that he doesn't even know the difference between government and corporations and how they have incompatible systems of how they operate. So, anyway, at this point, the interviewer again points out Yarvin's cherry picking and using historical claims of events that are highly debated among historians and presenting them as objectively true. Yarvin makes no argument in response to this. He then argues that women, black people, and lower classes in pre-democratic monarchies had good lives. Yeah, bro. Everyone was living in a fucking utopia under monarchies. Not at all mostly rich white people. Yarvin says people had just as much freedom as today during the era of kings because he makes the completely unsupported claim that people are confusing freedom with power. He thinks that people got more power with things like the right to vote than they did power. Oh, sorry. He got more power with things like the right to vote than they did freedom. Since to him, increased power without freedom did/does not make our lives any better. Clearly a specious argument, though. The right to make more decisions yourself is still freedom. Something doesn't have to improve your life in order for it to qualify as freedom. Even if you see, even if you make to me the valid point that you can be imprisoned by like FOMO, fear of missing out, in terms of the number of decisions you make. Like people have talked about this, the psychological experiment of presenting people with the ice cream options of vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry, and then presenting them with like 36 flavors or something like that. And most people end up choosing chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry anyway, that sort of thing. But that still doesn't mean that the freedom to make more decisions is not actually freedom, it's just power. You still have the freedom to choose those different types of ice cream. It's not as if having more flavors of ice cream to choose from means that you have more power but without freedom. It makes no fucking sense. So, but anyway, so something doesn't have to improve your life in order for it to qualify as freedom. Obviously, he doesn't even support that. He doesn't even back up that argument at all with any supporting claim. He's basing his claim that more rights are more power rather than freedom on his bankrupt other claim that something is only freedom if it improves your life. But he doesn't have an argument in support of his claim that something is only freedom if it improves your life. He doesn't say why. So that's fucking like logically bankrupt. And the ability to make more decisions is obviously more freedom, even if it doesn't improve your life. Freedom doesn't have to be like this thing, it just means like more ability to make more decisions. Power and freedom are different, but the power to vote is one of countless examples of freedom being pretty synonymous with power. That's obviously not even close to always the case, but it depends on the context, obviously. The degree to which different things are similar or different depends on the context. It's all there. Yeah, that's all there is to it. So even if voting doesn't make our lives better, the ability to vote is still less authoritarian and more free than being prevented from voting. That's it's as simple as that. Yarvin concludes this dumb interview by saying that the world needs more trolling. Yeah, Curtis Yarvin is not an intellectual. He's an egomaniacal, pseudo-intellectual crackpot and professional shit disturber MAGA sycophant who seems oblivious to his specious arguments and cherry-picking due to his massively oversimplified ideology. And conservatives love him.